my life, removing pain. Lord, let my words heal a heart that hurts. I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life mending broken people.
Hello, I'm Shelley Quinn, and we will once again welcome you to 3ABN Today program. We're so glad that you're joining us, and we have an incredible story. It's a story that is, when I first heard it, it was rather shocking to me, actually. And there's bitterness, but it's bittersweet because we've got some people, some good Christian people who are doing something about it. Before I introduce our guests, let me read to you Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 10. And actually, our guest today chose this scripture. And this is Paul writing, we assume it's Paul, writing to the Hebrews. And he says, God is not unjust to forget your work and your labor of love, which you have shown toward his name, in that you have ministered to the saints, and you do minister. We're going to meet our special guests now who are ministering to the saints in Rwanda. Let me introduce to you Hans and Mindy, and let me make sure I'm saying this right, Thygeson?
That's correct.
What is that origin, Thygeson?
It's Danish.
Danish? Okay, well, we are so glad to have you here today. And Hans, you are the founder of Impact Hope.
That is correct, Shelley.
And your wife is co-founder. Huh?
Yep.
Well, we're so glad that you're here. Then we've gone from Danes, we're going to go to someone from Africa who's now living in the States as well. Lucie, let me go ahead and introduce you first, but Lucie, and your last name is pronounced Trepaniar.
Yes.
You all are giving me a little challenge today. So you were born in Africa. When did you come here?
I came here in 1963 at the end.
Okay.
To try and start college.
Okay.
Ended up going to high school again, my last year.
All right. So, well, we're just fascinating accent. I love your accent.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
We're just very glad all three of you are joining us today. And we're going to be talking about these three wonderful people who just ordinary people like you and me. And we're all ordinary people. It's just that God's using them in an extraordinary way. And isn't it amazing when we say to him, here am I, send me, how he does send me. But before we get into this, I'm going to give these people a little reprieve, give them a moment to get used to the cameras, and we're going to have Jamie George play for us. He is one of my favorite people, and he's such a talented young man. He's going to play for us, His Eye is on the Sparrow. Mm. Jamie George, I'll tell you, God gave him a talent that can, when Jamie's playing the violin, he can bring me to tears, I'll put it that way. He can transport you before the throne of grace. Well, if you're joining us just a little late, today we are interviewing the folk from Impact Hope. And it's an amazing story behind this. And let me once again introduce the husband and wife team. We have Hans and Mindy Thygeson. I'm
That's
so
correct.
afraid I'm
Yep.
going to say that
Yeah,
wrong.
no.
And then we also have Lucie Trepaniar.
Either way is fine.
All right, we'll do the anglicized way. Let's get a little backstory, because you have an amazing ministry, but I'd like to hear a little about your lives. You grew up, both of you, and we're going to be speaking with husband and wife first, and we'll get to Lucie in a moment. But you grew up in Adventist Christian homes. In fact, Mindy, you were a PK,
That's
preacher's kid, right?
That's right.
Yes. And how did the two of you meet?
We met through the church up at youth camp in Oregon, and we're both, Adventist, and we especially felt a call to try to do ministry, and
Wonderful.
so that's kind of.
So you met, you married, you have 3 beautiful children, all under the age of 7.
Yep.
Oh, mercy. And that's a handful. You were a nurse, an OR nurse.
Yep.
And what is your business, Hans?
So we have a business where we build and develop commercial real estate, specifically apartments and senior housing.
Okay. So here you've got this wonderful life going on, but you both felt the call to ministry before you married, and once as you're married, you're really feeling this call, which I would say that anybody who is the mother of children, especially 3 that are under the age of 7, that's a full-time ministry. Being a mama is a full-time ministry, and it's a blessing. But you are seriously praying about, Lord, what would you have us to do, right?
Correct. And exploring mission opportunities.
Okay. So you've been on a few mission trips, taking your children on mission trips, but something happened, and tell us what happened.
Well, we had an Easter celebration with some church members, and at their house we were having Easter service, and there's a gentleman that told us about these refugees in Rwanda, and he said that all these refugees are predominantly Seventh-day Adventist, and they're some of the smartest kids in all of Africa that they're working with, and we'd never heard of that before.
All right, so he tells you, now was he an Adventist?
No, he wasn't.
All
He
right.
wasn't. But he was at the Easter celebration.
So you meet this man who's telling you about the 80,000 people there and these smart kids. Interesting story, you've not heard of, but what cemented the deal for you, Mindy?
Well, it was actually Hans decided to go to Rwanda.
But did the gentleman, how did you get that, your interest to peak it?
When he said, because I really felt he was speaking through the Holy Spirit, he said, "These are your people. What are you as a church doing for these refugees who've been living in Rwandan refugee camps for over 20 years? What are you doing as a church for these people?"
And so we met with him several times to try to verify the story, because we had never heard about all these Seventh-day Adventist refugees. We met with him several times, we had him over to our house, and we heard this amazing story of these people that had been living for many years in these refugee camps, and they were, the man told us they were devout Adventists, and we talked to people around the church. They hadn't heard the story, so in the spring of 2015, I went with this organization to Rwanda to visit these camps and actually see if it was true, because I really questioned if it was a true story that they were telling.
And when you got there, you found that these poor people had been in these camps, many of them for 20 years. Tell us about the Rwandan camps, and then we'll get to tell us about the camp condition that we're finding our brothers and sisters in Rwanda, and then we'd like to hear why they're there.
So going with this group, we went to this one specific camp, Gahembe, which has been around since '97. And basically these people are living on the top of a mountain. There's over 13,000 people in a very tight camp, living in mud huts that are 12 feet by 15 feet in a remote location, harsh living conditions. Basically, you could say like the surface of the moon or a gravel field. And so they're very tough conditions. And these people are basically there because the safety of their life.
All right, so they're refugees from where?
They're refugees from the Congo. So what happened was in 1994, after the genocide that happened against the Tutsis in Rwanda, the perpetrators who had committed the atrocities against humanity, they started to fear for their own lives and safety because they had done terrible things. Yes. And so they began to flee Rwanda by the hundreds of thousands. And they fled into neighboring countries like Tanzania and Burundi and Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay, and these are the Hutus, right?
These are the Hutu perpetrators, yes. So in the Congo, they found that the tribal systems are the same. There's Hutus and Tutsis. And so genocide began again in the Congo.
That's unbelievable.
And so in the area that was particularly targeted happened to be primarily Seventh-day Adventist Christians. It was fertile land and it was prized to the Hutus. And so the killing began. Meanwhile, the Hutus are fleeing for their lives back into Rwanda.
The Hutus,
the Tutsis
okay,
are fleeing.
So we've got this horrible massacre that happened in Rwanda, and the Hutus were the ones who were carrying this out against the Tutsis.
Yes.
Correct.
Now, the Hutus go into the Congo, find more Tutsis there, and begin it again.
Yes.
So now the Tutsis, we've got the Hutus fleeing to the Congo because they think they're going to be prosecuted for war crimes.
Right.
But then they do it again, and now the Tutsis are, am I saying that right?
Tutsis
are fleeing back into Rwanda. What did the Rwandan government welcome them?
Well, initially they were put up in an Adventist university called Mudende, but unfortunately held as refugees at that university. Unfortunately, one night Hutu militants came across the border from the Congo and massacred around 1,200 Adventists at that university. After that event, the Rwandan government said, we'll put you in a safe place. And so they're not giving them prime real estate. They're giving them the tops of hills, places that are not very usable. And so that's where they put the refugees now, and they set up several camps initially, and now there are 5 Congolese refugee camps in Rwanda with nearly 80,000 people, most of whom are Seventh-day Adventist Christian.
And that's where Lucie's going to come in just a moment. It's such a fascinating story, how she connects as a friend and with this group, because her grandfather, I'm going to give away, her grandfather was the one who first evangelized these precious people. Now, I think we have just a few pictures of the camp. I want to just put this in your mind right now. So let's just show the first 3 pictures of the camp. This is the welcoming sign.
This is Gahembe Refugee Camp.
Okay.
And this was the very first camp that was started from the massacre at the Adventist University in '96.
All right, and then they have these children. If we'll go to the next picture here, we've got, life is tough for these kids, isn't it?
Yes.
They are living in, I think the next picture shows us some mud huts. They live in these mud huts. Where do they get the tarps for the roof?
The UN issues them tarps for the roofs, and so each family is able to have a mud hut that's roughly 12 by 15 feet in size.
But all water is coming from 1 or 2 water spigots for the entire camp. And so it's very common to see children of young ages hauling water uphill typically to their homes. There's no electricity in the camps. and they're living on 24 cents a day, which is provided by the United Nations, which is essentially enough for one meal a day.
Oh, that's amazing. So what is the country of Rwanda? Is it fairly developed compared to many African countries?
Fairly, yeah. Yeah, it's, it's still relatively third world, but it's advanced as far as as far as an African country.
All right, so they have a fairly good education system. How do, out of these 80,000 mostly Seventh-day Adventist Christians, your brothers and sisters, in these camps, how many of these are children, would you say?
There's a huge number of children because most of these people these kids have been born into the camps, and we figure there's roughly 10,000 high school age kids that are not able to obtain an education because of the remoteness of the camps and just the lack of opportunity to them.
All right, so they do have some education there for the younger ones,
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, primary school. They're being provided a basic education in primary school. But it's just not enough to really give them a leg up or give them an opportunity to succeed once they're an adult.
All right, so they're educating them there at the camps through
Yeah.
what grade?
Through
the ninth grade.
Through the ninth grade.
Through the ninth grade. But they wouldn't have much success in getting a job or doing anything.
Rwanda has a very difficult job market. It's very hard to get a job with a ninth grade education, almost impossible. And so really, the children in the camps are helpless. And they will say, we were helpless. And they really mean it. There's nothing to do. And so unfortunately, this leads to early family. They have families at young ages because there's really nothing to do. So unfortunately, and this is where we decided to try and make a difference.
All right, so these poor precious people, they fled there because they didn't want to fight. They partly was to preserve life, but they didn't want to engage in warfare.
Yeah.
So they're there, and now the camps have been there for 20 years.
Yep.
You said most of the kids there have grown up in the camps, but there's been some recent genocide again,
Yeah.
hasn't there?
Yeah, and there is some of these camps that has formed as recently as 2012. So we have students that are in our program that have experienced genocide in the Congo and have had to flee. A lot of them have lost family members, parents. We have a high number of orphans and just kids that have experienced just unimaginable situations. And when you hear their stories, it's very gripping.
Okay, so Hans, you go over, you visit, you see these deplorable conditions, you see what's going on. What happened next?
So Shelley, what was so inspiring? I go there, I see, and I'm, used to. I've experienced some rugged conditions and stuff like that, but it was something that I'd never seen before. These people living basically in dirt, and they were clean and happy, and that was so inspiring to me. Was just the overall morale. These people's faith was in God and their heavenly home. And I was so moved visiting with them because I was with this secular group touring, and when I would say that I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, their whole focus would change as a group, and they would just, all they wanted to do is talk to me about my faith and about my Seventh-day Adventist heritage, when the host that had brought me there had spent a huge amount of money taking their kids to university. And so I just really realized that the most important thing to these people was their faith and their spiritual life and their hope in heaven. And so we instantly bonded, and these people I spent a couple weeks with, and I was very moved, and I said, you know what, we've got to do something for these people.
All right, so you'd been praying earnestly that, when you ask God to give you a ministry, He will. And He just actually plopped this one into your lap, did He not?
Yeah, it was not exactly what we expected as ministry,
Yeah.
but we've been so touched by these people.
So you go back, you form a 501c3, a nonprofit organization called Impact Hope. What is the mission? I mean, you can't meet all of their needs. What is your specific mission for Impact Hope?
We believe that all children should have the equal opportunity to education. And so because of Impact Hope and funding, we are able to send 234 children from the refugee camps to Adventist boarding academies in Rwanda in the very first year. This year we have 362 young children from high school age children from the camps in Adventist boarding academies.
It's wonderful. But do these children does the Rwandan government not say, come go to our public schools?
Well,
tell us about
in
that.
fact, they do. The kids in the camps came together and they formed a Hope School. They said that we're not going to get an education, so we have to provide it for ourselves. So after the 9th grade, they started this school they called it the Hope School, because they finally had hope in something. And they called anyone in the camps who had an education before they became refugees, and they begged them, they said, please, you teach us math, teach us science. And the students did very well, and they studied, and they were very diligent. Well, in 2015, the Rwandan government closed the Hope School down, saying it wasn't accredited. And so after that happened, the students were now hopeless. But the government said, well, you can attend local Rwandan high schools. Unfortunately, because of where the camps are situated, it is very hard to get to local Rwandan high schools. And some camps that are close enough are still a 16-kilometer walk round trip, which is about 10 miles round trip each day.
From the top of a mountain. This isn't not just a walk down a city street. It's top of the mountain down into town in remote areas.
And unfortunately, there's victimization that is happening along the roadways. I mean, we're talking rape and abuse to especially the girls who are risking their lives to become educated. And so
amazing that they have such a strong desire and commitment to get their education.
Yes, you know, it's very strong. And so because of their desire to be educated and our desire to help our fellow Adventist people is the reason that we started Impact Hope and make a difference.
So just a little story, Shelley, about these kids walking to school. In September, we took Walla Walla University students who have adopted this program.
This was September of 2016? Or?
Yeah, of 2016. Yep, so this last September in 2016, I was fortunate enough to take a group from Walla Walla University because they had adopted this refugee program as their specific mission fundraiser for the year there. And so I was visiting the camp and meeting with the UN, meeting with the education directors, and there in the camp, the ADRA director, her name's Betty, and she specifically asked me, and she said, Mr. Hans, we have 98 girls that are walking this 16 kilometers, which is roughly 10 miles every day into town, and these terrible things are happening to them. What can you do for these girls? And so she asked me twice, and she's there in front of the UN, and she's asking me, these girls, we really need to do something because of the terrible things that are happening to them. So that day, it was a hot, miserable day. I'm a person that, you know, I think I can handle a lot, but it was, you know, 90 plus degrees, the sun, the dust was blowing, I was having a hard time breathing in the camp. And I'm seeing all these kids that, you know, are living in difficult conditions. And I'm leaving, riding out in an air-conditioned vehicle, and I see all these girls walking back. And the feeling that went over me is a feeling that I haven't experienced much in my life. And it was a feeling of fear, and I basically got a chill. And I thought, Shelley, of the story that we all know so well of the Good Samaritan.
Yes. And
thought came to me is, am I going to be a priest or a Levite and just drive by, or am I going to be a Samaritan? And am I going to help these kids? So I immediately got back to my hotel and I contacted Mindy and I told her about these 98 girls. And I said, you know, now we have another group of kids that we have to help. And so we immediately said, we're going to do something. And fortunately, we were able to reach out to sponsors, fellow believers, and tell them about these devout Adventist kids. And they've rallied around, and we were able to help those 98 girls.
Praise God. So you've got all 98 in schools now. I think we have some pictures of the kids, and we'd like to see those now. Walk us through these, Mindy.
Well, this is at each refugee camp where we have students coming from the camps is a plaque that you see that shows that we're a reputable organization that's working in partnership with ADRA Rwanda, and they're actually implementing our program in Rwanda by guaranteeing that the students are in school, that they have what they need. This is a student who's coming to school the first time in her life. She is going to have a new mattress to sleep on. The first time in her life that she will have 3 meals a day. And the first time that they will have a roof over their head instead of a tarp.
So this is at the school dorm?
This is in one of the school dormitories, and they are very happy to be in this place. They say they've come to Europe because the contrast between the refugee camps and the schools are so extreme that to them, even though it's a very humble academy, even by our standards in America, this is like Europe.
Oh, I bet. And these are precious faces here. Now, we'll just keep going through these because we've got some more questions, but there's...
So these kids, and you'll see how their bright, shiny faces, we're so proud to have these kids in these programs because they are the top kids in the school. They're the head boys and the head girls, and as a whole, our refugee students are academically the top students, and they're the spiritual leaders in the school. In fact,
Praise God.
We got a call from ADRA, who we have an employee running our program with, and said, the president of the Central African Union wants to take and put your refugees in another boarding school because of how these refugee students have set the tone and the spiritual life at these schools. And so I actually, this September in 2016, when I was over there, I got to meet 4 different times with the union president, and he said, because of our program in these schools, we were able to keep one Adventist boarding school in operation, and we were able to help build a multi-purpose building at another school. So we feel like these dollars are not just helping these devout Adventist kids, but they're also helping the Adventist education program in Central Africa.
Amen. You know, when we first met, Mindy, you told me that God was really stretching you and getting her outside of her comfort zone because neither one of you enjoyed public speaking, and that now God is putting you in churches to talk about this and to raise these funds. And basically what you're doing is a kind of a formula that's familiar to many, is that you're raising sponsorship for these children so that they can go on to school. And it's really very reasonable. Explain to us how $50 a month or $600 a year, how can you get into a boarding school with for tuition and your room and board and everything?
You know, and that's where we were inspired to really feel like God worked, and by putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. All the dollars that we raise, 100% of it goes to Africa, and all our time is donated, and we were able to get the buying power and the expertise of ADRA, who we have an employee that runs this program and works through ADRA. And then we went to the Adventist church in Rwanda and we said, what are we doing for these refugees? How come nobody is there helping them? And they said, Mr. Hans, if you guys put together a program, we will see that these people got helped. So less than a year later, we came back to them with some dollars, and they have given us tuition at 40 to 60% of the actual rate for these boarding schools. And then ADRA was able to put, with their significant buying power, has able to really stretch our dollars. So for $600, which is significantly less than boarding school tuition, we're able to get their clothes, their food, their actually medical insurance, transportation.
Spoon and forks, Bibles, the mattress and sheets, 2 sets of uniforms, and tuition.
And so, and they get 3 meals a day.
And they get 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Which,
Now tell us a little. We have a picture of a sign. It's the Getaway. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Getaway College.
Collège. I think it's French.
yeah.
Collège Adventiste.
This is actually a high school. It's one of the schools where we have about 70 students this year. And, well, are we going to talk about
Well, that's what
Lucie?
we're leading into.
Yep.
You are at a
This
camp
is-
meeting and you're presenting your story and you bring
Yeah.
up the
Yeah.
Getaway. And
Yeah.
what happens?
So, and we're working with 4 Adventist colleges or boarding academies, and Getaway and Ron Carey and are some very predominant old Adventist names in Africa. And so we're presenting, and Mindy, you can kind of tell about that.
We were presenting at the Oregon camp meeting, and right after we'd finished, we went to our booth, and not long after, Lucie and her mom, being pushed in a wheelchair, came as quickly as they could, and they said, "Do you know why all those refugees are Seventh-day Adventist? My grandfather was one of the first Adventist missionaries in Rwanda and the Congo back in the early 1900s.
Okay, Lucie, so this is Grandpa, huh?
This is Grandpa Delhove. His name is David Elie Delhove from Belgium, and accepted the message very young, dedicated his life to mission service. During World War I, he was at early. He was in the Tanzania area,
Okay.
serving the Lord, and then World War I came around, so he couldn't go back to Belgium. So he was one of the Allied spies, so to speak, during the war, and he was going back and forth in Rwanda and Burundi and also part of the Congo. And he said, "Oh man, this is a great place to establish some mission," because the place was populated. So when the war ended, he went back to Belgium and told his wife, they had 2 children then, "We're going to Africa." And they approached the German mission. They said, "Yes, let's go. We'll send you." So they ended up there, no roads anywhere, but they finally made it into Rwanda. And he was given 3 Protestant missions that originally were German. And my mother was born at one of those in 1919. And so that started the work there. They were working with the people that had already been Christians, and he hadn't worked with them long enough so that they would become Adventists before the Belgian government came and said, "You can't have these missions anymore. There's a Belgian Protestant society that's going to come take them, so you need to go find your own mission." And so he prayed, and he started walking, and he finally came to this place, this hill. Everybody called it Getaway Hill. And there were no trees, there were no villages, there was nothing living up there. And he found out the story that there was a king of Rwanda. We assume that his name, the one that we're talking about, his name was Musinga. He had come from a campaign, a war campaign, and he was crossing Getaway Hill, and it was just pouring down rain. He got so mad. When he ended up crossing the hill, he turned around and he cursed it with his gods. He says, "No one's ever going to live there, and there's a big curse." And so that's why nobody was there. And so Grandpa said, "I'm going to pray about this." And he was impressed. This is the place. So he went, climbed the hill, and he put up his tent there. And eventually, he built a house, and that's where my mother remembers her first years.
And then he built a big
And
church.
then he built this huge church
That's
called Gitwe Church. And that was built in between 1922 and 1923. And he really...
This is on a hill where there were no
Yeah.
villages. He just had incredible faith.
Yep. And the first Adventists were baptized in 1921. And that was the beginning.
That is such an amazing story. Now, your family, your father actually kind of took up the work after your
The Congo
grandfather.
Union approached my dad because Dad and Mom were married at Kirundu Mission in the Ituri forest while Grandpa and Grandma were serving there. And Grandpa married them, and they went to Gitwe that Grandpa had started to begin with.
Okay.
And things happened. Kids were born, etc., and they were moved from one station to another. And that's us there at Kirundu Mission. No, excuse me, that was Songa Hospital, where I was born, and my brother was born there in south part of Congo.
Okay.
And so as time went by, Grandpa got retired, and then the Congo Union came to him and said, would you take over the pioneering of Adventist missions? So one of the missions he pioneered was Nebasa Mission in the northernmost part of the Congo. And in 1950, that was in 1948, 1948. And then in 1950, the first Adventists were that's them right there, were baptized. And not too long after that, because of these folks, there was this thatched first church there. And there's the group.
Oh,
And,
praise the Lord.
Dad and Mom served there for 35 years. Well,
Now, then you ended up getting
Then-
involved in
then-
Rwanda.
Then one day, I was watching the news, and I saw terrible pictures in '94 of the genocide, and I'm going, oh my goodness, these are my people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These are my people, and I got to do something. So I went to the bedroom, and I knelt down. I said, God, do something with me, and He allowed me to raise money, and I was able to go with this group that they have a major international medical teams,
Yes.
and I went with them. They're not Adventists, but I went with them. I was the only Adventist in there, and we went and served for 3 months in the refugee camps. So then when I heard them at camp meeting last year, I thought, oh my, this is going to make a full circle for me. So I went to talk to them and introduced Mom, who's going on 98 now.
Oh, bless
And
her.
she lives with me. But, and it was wonderful to see that these folks were doing something wonderful for the refugees that we had worked with in, years before.
Yes.
And it just kind of making a full circle, and I wanted to be involved, so here I am.
And Lucie, just praise God for you to be able to see that the work that your grandfather, or the work the Lord accomplished through your grandfather and your father, had such a lasting, deep impact on these precious people, because you have said, Hans, that they're just, as you said, their faith is more important to them than anything. And
Yep.
that's just so amazing. So when how often do you go over?
Well, we go, Mindy, between Mindy and myself, we're going 4 to 5 times a year.
All right, and you get to see the kids at the school. And,
Yeah.
Yep.
And
We make sure and follow up, and we're, just kind of assessing the program, spending time with the kids, trying to mentor them, and just run the program. Mindy basically runs the program full-time from our house, and we're very passionate. God's blessed us by being able to be involved in this, and it's been a transforming experience for our family.
Well, every time I think about my lack of desire for public speaking, I think about the kids, because they have a Christianity that we just don't see every day.
Yes.
And they're carrying their Bibles everywhere they go because it's the most important thing to them. And they're just incredible kids. And they kind of get under your skin and you just, you want to stay. It's the worst part is leaving.
Oh, I'm sure.
So,
Excuse me. And that's one thing, that when you have been in Africa, especially involved in something like this, it grabs your heart so strongly that you don't want to leave and you want to go back.
Amen. Amen.
So
I just praise God to think that, He stirred your heart and that He brought the young man into your life to introduce this to you. And I don't know about you, but God's stirring my heart as well. If you would like to perhaps sponsor a child for $50 a month, they can go to the Adventist boarding schools, they can be educated, and they're just trying to give them hope that this cycle of living, for generation after generation in a refugee camp, that this cycle can be broken and that there can be more. And because they are such strong Christians, that they will continue to evangelize as they go forward in their life. But if you'd like to get in touch with Hans and Mindy to maybe come speak at your church, or just to make a charitable donation to their nonprofit organization, here's how you can get in touch with them.
Impact Hope was formed to enable sponsorship for students so they can attend boarding school. There they can enjoy quality education, better living conditions, and an opportunity to learn more about God. If you'd like to know more about this ministry, you can write to Impact Hope, 2500 Willamette Falls Drive, Suite 207, West Lynn, Oregon 97068. That's Impact Hope, 2500 Willamette Falls Drive, Suite 207, West Lynn, Oregon 97068. You can call 503-673-3905. That's 503-673-3905. Or visit them online at impact-hope.org. That's impact-hope.org.
Well, I'm sure that the Holy Spirit is moving upon many people's hearts, and Hans and Melinda would love to hear from you. Now, I've just learned that we have a video roll, and we would like to show you. Can you set that up, one of you, to tell us what this roll is about?
well, my daughter narrated the video, so
Okay.
the cute little voice you hear is my 7-year-old. And it shows our program. It shows some pictures of our kids and the camps where they're coming from.
Okay, then we'll roll that now.
My name is Leah and my parents go to Africa a lot. There is a big city in Rwanda called Kigali. But not far from the big city, something called a refugee camp. My parents told me that there was a war that made people have to run away from their own homes and live in another country. People who had to leave their homes have been living in Rwanda refugee camps for over 20 years. They have to hike to get water, and there are no lights and no showers. They even have only enough money for one meal a day. They can only go to school until 9th grade in the camps. When my mom and dad heard about these people, they were sad because most of the people are Seventh-day Adventists like us.
Can we ask if any of the students are Seventh-day Adventists?
Yeah, no problem. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Hari abanyeshuri b'Abadivantisiti b'umunsi wa karindwi bari hano?
Yes.
Ibiganza
Can you
hejuru.
raise your hand?
I am a Seventh-day Adventist, and almost the population of Gihembe Refugees Camp are Adventists also. There are many students who need the help. So we come tell you that our students need really the help to attend the university because they did not have that chance. Thank you so much.
My mom and dad started something called Impact Hope. They are trying to raise money to send kids to go to school longer so they can get jobs, so they can take care of their families. Because of your support, Impact Hope was able to add more students for the 2017 school year. Now we have 350 refugee students attending safe Adventist boarding schools.
As far as refugees are concerned, we were all hopeless, but you have come to support us. With this, we would like to assure you that we are going to work hard and succeed, not only at school, but even in everyday life. Hoping that you are going to be the one who will help us in order to fulfill our dreams.
There are lots more kids who want to go to school. Will you help us?
Well, once again, this is a moving story to think that there are so many Christians, Seventh-day Adventist Christians, who are living in these camps, who've been there, some of them, for over 20 years. So approximately 10,000 are high school-aged children. And do you ever get to, I mean, you've made, to think that you've got 360 kids in the school is amazing in a short time. But do you ever just feel like more, Lord?
You know what? We definitely do. And what has been so inspiring is going to these refugee camps. Like last September, I was in a refugee camp in the teachers there, in grade school teachers said, you know, Hans, your program has inspired and made teaching so much easier for us because these kids finally have hope. And out of that camp, there's 17,000 people living there. We were able to only take 54 kids out of that camp.
Well, the thing, if we could do it ourselves, we would do it.
Yes.
But we can't. And that's why we're here. Part of the reason, collectively though, as Seventh-day Adventists, we can come together, and together we can. 10,000 is nothing for God.
You're absolutely
Amen.
right, Mindy. Amen. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back in just a moment to have a final word with Hans and Mindy and Lucie, but stay tuned. Well, this has been an eye-opener for me because I didn't realize there were so many Adventists in Rwanda, but especially I didn't realize that they were living in refugee camps. What do you have planned for the future in addition to sponsoring the children for their high school education and giving them hope? What else do you have planned?
Well, Shelley, we have some exciting things planned for Impact Hope. We're very excited to train these kids in technical schools and give them life skills. We also see the very committed fervor that these kids have for the work of God. And so we're planning on using these kids to do evangelism. We're planning on starting a program this November. We're going to be over there working with these kids on their summer break doing lay evangelism because we feel like these 350 some kids are Gideon's army for us, and they can help us finish the work, do evangelism to their people because they definitely know how to share their faith.
And that's what we're looking for, is total member involvement, get everybody doing something. That is exciting. Thank you so much, Hans, for what you're doing. And do you need people to help train you with evangelism?
We're very excited to have people partner with us.
Right.
The great thing about this ministry, Shelley, is they can, for $50 a month, they can sponsor a kid. They can have contact with that kid. They can also go to Africa with us and be involved in evangelism, being involved in teaching these kids life skills such as sewing, bricklaying, carpentry, computers, gardening. So we're looking for people to finish the work.
So they can just go to there'll be more information on your website. That's impact-hope.org.
Okay.
Quick thought, 5 seconds.
These kids are part of our global church family, and $50 a month can change their life forever.
Thank you, Lucie.
And I just want to say, you've got to get involved because it'll change your life.
Well, praise God, the three of you got involved. And we just appreciate, as Paul said, the ministry that you do to the saints. For those of you at home, our prayer is that the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit will be with you always. Goodbye.